From the 28-yard line of Auburn. Bama going left to right. Rice gets the snap, knee high. Looks, throws the fade route, near side end zone. Got it! Caught! Touchdown, Alabama! Caught by Ja'Cory Brooks in the end zone.
And Chris Davis takes it to the back of the end zone. He'll run it out to the 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 45. There goes Davis!
Oh my God!
Davis is going to run it all the way back! Auburn's going to win the football game! Auburn's going to win the football game!
And Alabama has come from nowhere to defeat the Auburn Tigers in multiple overtimes.
Welcome to Tide and Tigers. I guess you're asking, Brett, what's happened to Final Answer? Final Answer is still here. We had a lot of negotiations. Brett Powell, you know how he gets with his contracts, but we have been approached for another market to focus just on Alabama and Auburn. This is not just football, this is basketball. Obviously, big things happening in the basketball world for both teams. Baseball, you name it, we'll be covering here on Tide and Tigers. And Tigers? Is it Tigers? No, Tide and Tigers. There's a lot of things that we really want to push with this show. The back and forth banner between the two teams. We love the discussions. We love the arguments. We're going to ensue the chaos. We want people to get fired up about their teams and really pushing to make this rivalry even greater. I think it's lost a little bit of its luster this year. There's not really a national championship or an SEC championship on the line, but that doesn't change. This is the greatest rivalry in college football, and it's exciting to start this new chapter. I'll be covering Alabama side. Chance will be covering the Auburn side, and then we'll still discuss a lot of the things in the college football world. But we're excited for this new chapter of Tide and Tigers. This is a project I think I wanted to start coming out of Tuscaloosa when I graduated from down there, and things just got shifted. But we're circling back, as all great things do. You circle back, and we're back doing what we originally wanted to do almost 15 years ago. So I'm excited. I can't wait to share this platform with all of you. But let's hit the ground running. Let's get started on what this is going to be based on, and we'll start with me and start with the number one, and that's Alabama. No offense to Chance, but Auburn hadn't been relevant in college football in a very long time. I do think that time is coming very soon, but we'll just start with the Tide, and this is a great week to start this show. This is the Iron Bowl. This is the greatest rivalry. Why not kick off the show in Iron Bowl week? It's Thanksgiving week. There's the best football games of the year with all the rivalries going on, but especially the one that's happening in Tuscaloosa. Let's go over some quick facts. Alabama has never beaten Auburn in Tuscaloosa without Nick Saban as head coach. Now you're thinking, how is that even possible, Brett? Well, most people who are involved with this rivalry know that this game was actually played in Birmingham before it was played in Tuscaloosa and Auburn. A lot like the cocktail party that's played in Jacksonville. It just started probably about 15, 20 years ago where they started actually exchanging Auburn and Tuscaloosa as they play the game. But Alabama's never beat them there without Nick Saban. So that's something that's never happened. Now, also, Alabama's coming off the loss to Oklahoma. I want to dig back into this game first before we go into the Iron Bowl. A very disappointing performance from Alabama. That may be one of the most disappointing performances I've seen from Alabama in, since Nick Saban really started. Maybe the Louisiana Monroe game. Alabama scored 3 points. 3 points. It's the first time that Alabama has not scored a touchdown since 2011. And that was the game of the century. That was the 9-6 game. So that game, there wasn't going to be many touchdowns scored in it. But it's been almost 13 years since Bama's gone without a touchdown. It starts at the quarterback position. Jalen did not have his best game. And it was really, crazy to me talking to a lot of people about Alabama. Jalen was coming off his best game as an Alabama football player against LSU. Ran for 4 touchdowns again. One of his best and most explosive games. And then you completely flip-flop that to probably his worst game as an Alabama football quarterback. 3 interceptions. A lot of people are getting on him for the interception that went for a touchdown that he really didn't, try to tackle the guy. As you've known before in my previous podcast shows, whatever you want to call it, I've always said Friday Night Lights-esque. If a quarterback goes diving for a DB going full speed and hurts himself, that's the last thing. The quarterback runs the whole college football. If you have a good quarterback, you are going to be relevant. Ask Florida. Look what they've done with Lagway. Look what they've done without him. They couldn't even score a point against Texas until the third quarter, and now they're beating Ole Miss and they're beating LSU. So a quarterback to risk himself to make a tackle on a linebacker DB going for a touchdown, I didn't hate that Jalen didn't make the play on it. I think you could have given a little bit more effort, but still, if he gets hurt, Bama season's done anyways. So, the game, to me was not out of hand at that point. So it is what it is. I think people can, have different opinions on that. But you go back to Bama, a couple series later, or maybe actually the next series, when they hit Ryan Williams for the touchdown and they get called for the illegal formation. Whether it was basketball last night, whether it was football, so many of these games are being determined by referees. And that to me has to be looked at this all season of saying, why can we not go back and look? If there is a penalty that determines a huge part in the game, why can we not go back and look and see if it really was a penalty? Whether it was a face mask, whether it was an illegal formation. That was a huge play in the game. One of the greatest catches I've seen in a very long time, and it gets called back for a penalty where it should have been called dead at the line of scrimmage. Instead, the guy's throwing the flag when he's in the end zone. Awful call. Could Alabama come back and win that game? I don't know. But that cuts the lead to 14. They get a stop. They go score again. It's a 7-point game. You just never know. But it killed every bit of momentum. And I think it really determined the game at that point of saying it was over. So just a couple big plays. The thing that I determined so much of, after Jalen had such a big game against LSU, he ran for 7 yards against Oklahoma. They go as he goes. And now you're looking at, there's 3 road games, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma, where they've looked like a completely different team than they look like at home. Now, the LSU game was on the road, and they played very well there, but it's been a Jekyll and Hyde all year, and you just don't see that from an Alabama football team. You can say the changing of the guard with DeBoer, you can say so much, but to me, that you can't just not show up like they did in Norman. That was just not, especially with playoffs on the line. Now they're saying Bama's, I think, is ranked 13th. You can't, they're going to have a bunch of things happen to get in, and that's just not, how you get into a playoff. You need to make it happen for yourself, is what I'm trying to say. So, just like I said, very disappointing performance overall. Now you're going into the Iron Bowl with an Auburn team who just beat Texas A&M in 3, 4, 8 overtimes, whatever it took down there in Jordan-Hare. But, Nick Saban even said that place is haunted down there, and I truly believe what he said. This game's not in Jordan-Hare. This is in Tuscaloosa. I expect Bama to come back and play very well. They got to establish the run. You get 45 yards from Jam Miller, 18 yards from Justice Hayes, and then you only have 7 yards from Jalen Milroe. Their longest run was 11 yards. When's the last time that happened where there was no runs broke of 15, 20 yards in Alabama football? That's got to be over 15, 20, maybe not that long, but still. You're used to Bama establishing the run. I know they got behind, so you had to throw the football, but they cannot continue to get pass happy like I saw in Knoxville when Ryan Williams had 17 targets that game. Establish the run with Jalen, and then I think that's what's going to help them win this Iron Bowl. So, a lot to swallow from the Oklahoma game, but going into this Iron Bowl, to me, it's one of those things where if Bama can beat Bama, I think they can beat Auburn by 14 points. But the fact that Auburn's finally getting Cam Coleman involved, the fact that they're really starting to roll, Peyton Thorne has better stats than Jalen Milroe right now. That to me, if you'd have told me that week 3, I'd have told you you're the biggest liar in the world, that by this time, Peyton Thorne would actually have better stats than Jalen Milroe. But, another big point, too, is losing Lawson on defense in that Oklahoma game. He is what they call the green player, the one that calls the plays out. That, to me, is a huge... You lose that signal caller on defense, and somebody else has to step up.
Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson now is the guy having to step up. But usually Bama, because they recruit so well, it's usually a 5-star guy coming in to make those signal calls, but still, it's going to be a guy that's not the same as your captain on the defense. Again, defense I really didn't think played that bad. Obviously, the pick six, the 3 interceptions, they're having to play a lot from behind. But again, the message has to change for DeBoer. I think a lot of the time he came in, and I've told several people this, is he wanted to be completely different than Coach Saban. And you've seen a little bit that year with some of the players acting out, some of the things that are being done. It's just not that well-disciplined football that you're used to. And to me, it's cost them games. We had the double number a couple weeks ago that 2 guys on the same field. They pulled a Florida. That's Florida's role. They do stuff like that. So Bama now on the outside looking in, going into an Iron Bowl at home in a must-win game. They're not going to go to the SEC championship game this year. You're looking at a really good bowl game. I'll be very interested to see how this reflects on recruiting. They have a lot of good players coming in next year. I text Chance this probably 2 or 3 days ago. I would love to get a poll on Alabama fans on who wants Jalen Milroe to come back. Jalen still has another year, and I think he should come back. And I think he could have a dominant year and be the really overall favorite for the SEC as quarterback and team-wise to win the SEC. I know Lagway's coming on strong for Florida. I know Arch Manning's going to be with Texas next year. But Jalen could be really the key to the SEC next year. I just don't know, because of some of the things that I've heard from Bama fans, that they love Jalen one second, they don't love him the next second. I think he's a great quarterback. I think a lot of quarterbacks just have bad games sometimes. And I think that he just had a bad game, and he's got to bounce back this week. So I expect a big game from Jalen this week. I don't expect it to come down to a 4th and 21 like it did last year in Jordan-Hare Stadium. I expect Bama to win by over 10 points. I expect them to have one of their best games of the season. So, a lot to really take in and swallow for this team this year with a new football change of head coach, and it's just been a different type year. But they've had some big wins with Georgia and LSU. Even though LSU hadn't finished strong down the stretch, he's had some good signature wins this year. We need to see a rollover next year because they're already calling for his head on the Feinbaum show. But if he comes back and has another lackluster year in Bama standards, which is not getting into the playoffs, DeBoer may be on the hot seat fast. So, they're just not going to put up with that with Tuscaloosa after being spoiled for so long by Coach Saban. So, but yeah, I look forward to the Iron Bowl this week. I'm interested to see what Chance's take's going to be on it. I know Auburn's riding high after their big win on the Plains, but Auburn's one of those teams I think is trending up and playing better football, just like Florida is, where Bama seems to be going in the opposite direction. And this type of year with recruiting, bowl games, Auburn's actually playing for a bowl game. If they lose this, if they win this game, they can go to a bowl, which is a big deal when you're moving into the change of phase like Freeze is at the Auburn program. That's an extra 30 practices. That's an extra, time to get these young kids that are coming onto campus early and these young freshmen to get more, going into the next year. It's a really, you've seen so many coaches talk about that, but it's a huge deal to get into a bowl game. So Auburn's playing for a bowl game. Bama's playing for a chance to hopefully make the playoff if all things work out. So I expect some fireworks down in Tuscaloosa, but I expect Bama to win. My final score, I would say 28-17, Alabama. Roll Tide, Tide and Tigers.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Auburn side of Tide and Tigers, and I'm your host, Chance Guess. Let's get started on this Auburn-Texas A&M game last week. Quadruple overtime, ladies and gentlemen. It was wonderful. We had a great defense showing up. Our offense finally looks like it's gotten itself together. We look like a renewed offense. We look like we can finally hang with any team this season. Little too late probably, but we're a team that has, I guess you could say, circling the wagon, getting things put together finally, but again, at the wrong time. The end of the season is not the right time for us to finally become a team and learn how to use each other properly. But it carries over to next season, so back to the A&M game. They came to Auburn thinking that they were just going to wipe the floor with us. I know Auburn was the underdog. Nobody expected it. We have become the gatekeepers, people. We say who can and who can't make it into the playoffs. We just knocked out A&M in a quadruple overtime. We made sure that they didn't have a playoff hope. And now we're going to do the same thing to Alabama. They're right here on the fringe at 13. They can get in if a couple teams lose. So Auburn's got to do the duty and take them out. Keep them from getting into the playoffs. We're fighting for a bowl game even. So we need that. Let us have that bowl game. Now, a couple stats from that game. Peyton Thorne was 19 of 31 for 301 yards. He was averaging 9.7 yards a pass. That is great. 2 touchdowns and then, of course, 1 interception because that's about an average there. Probably more usually. Jarquez Hunter, who needs to have more handoffs than this per game. 28 carries for 130 yards. If we hand it to him about 2 or 3 more times, I bet he makes the 200 yards. Especially against this Alabama team. We're going to have to control the clock and hand the ball to him a good bit. Sorry about that. I have to go in and out and control some of the production stuff every once in a while. All right. Now, another rusher for us was Peyton Thorne. He carried the ball enough times, 11. That's actually too much for him because he risked fumbles and stuff at that. But 11 carries for 38 yards. Oh, forgot to add that to Jarquez Hunter. 28 carries, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. He had 3 tutties. Of course, the quadruple overtime helps and everything too. But that is the type of offense we need. He's throwing the ball, we're running the ball, and then we've got our 2 best receivers on the team, Cam Coleman and KLS, Keandre Lambert-Smith. It's amazing that someone with only 2 receptions, Lambert-Smith, can have 104 yards. He's averaging 50-plus yards a reception, and he didn't even have a touchdown. But I think his line was like 27.5 on longest reception for him, so that's just an easy check off. He's gotten every bettor that's bet on him a win every week that's bet on his receiving longest yards. Cam Coleman with 7 receptions, 128 yards, 2 touchdowns. They definitely can't stop him. And anything with inside the 20, he's golden. He's going to eat people up on the route, and if you throw it to him 99% of the time, he's coming down with it. So that is an offense that's finally playing like the Auburn we love and the Auburn we know. So can that carry over into the Iron Bowl? I think so. And I think that with this Iron Bowl, we've got 2 quarterbacks that are pretty much even. Like, Milroe can run the ball way better than Thorne. We know that. But when it comes down to it, I think Thorne might be the better passer, but he takes dumber risk, I guess is the best way to say it. So with that, we've got Thorne just outplaying Milroe by a couple yards in passing and in touchdowns. He's only got him beat by 5 touchdowns and has 1 less interception than Milroe. Now, what's impressive about that is that Milroe's played way more games this season, and Thorne, I think, has been pulled out of games and set 1 or 2 games. So that Thorne has played his butt off in the games he's been in. That's what that proves. Now, with Jarquez Hunter, he's the leading rusher. The leading rusher for Bama is Milroe. That's not looking good and promising for Alabama. That's going to be a hindrance, actually, because our defense is going to be able to handle the run. Now, as long as we can break down and contain Milroe and make him throw the ball instead of getting outside the pocket and running and trucking over our DBs, that's going to be what it comes down to. Can our defense contain him? I think that 11.5 point spread is an insult. I think Auburn stays within that easy. I want to say Auburn wins. I hope we win. I think Alabama's got the edge, and I think Alabama should win. But I'm pulling for Auburn. I've got money on that money line. Let's go, baby. Let's go. Receiving-wise, these 2 stats are unbelievable. You've got KLS, 42 receptions all year, 865 yards, 8 touchdowns. Ryan Williams, 42 receptions, 804 yards, and 8 touchdowns. Those 2 are identical. Can't wait to see how those DBs play each other because they've been practicing against the same guy for their team. They know how to handle speed and athleticism like each of them have. Can they do it in a game? It's going to be great matchups. I do think Auburn's defense is going to outplay Bama's defense. It's whether or not our offense can capitalize on turnovers and red zone, just all red zone visits. If we keep playing like we have been and not capitalizing inside the 20, then we're not going to win. Our kickers have not been what they need to be this season. We need to step that up. McPherson, I know you got it in you. Let's go. This game's probably going to come down to it. You're probably going to have to make 3 field goals for this game. But I do think Auburn's got I think they got it in them. I think Auburn's going to pull this one out. War Damn Eagle.
Neutral colors for the first episode. You went all in. You're Auburn. There's no doubt about it. But I guess, like I said, it's a family thing, so you're going to keep it in the Auburn family. I should have worn my Alabama stuff. Next week I will, because this green's not doing it for the rivalry.
With the green.
Yeah. I think it's a light green, right? All right. Great takes on Auburn. Like I said, I think you're exactly right. They're a team that is coming together at the right time. So this should make an interesting pick. There's a lot of things we're both going to do that's going to be a little bit different than kind of what we did on Final Answer. I know we're going to incorporate some NCAA football 2025 on there, something that you kind of came up with. I think that's a great idea. The gaming world of it. That we're going to do some interviews with players. We're going to get players involved in doing interviews with them as well. Obviously, with the NIL now, there's a lot more things I think that can open up to getting the players and coaches involved. But so many other aspects, but we're still going to always circle back to our favorite part of the show, which is the picks. Yeah. So 10 picks. We're going to do 10 games. It's rivalry week. But before we get to those 10 picks, I wanted to ask you, as you're bumping in, you got to realize this is a show where Chance has got so much going on. He's going to bump in and out, get everything going. You just got to let him be sometimes. Whether it's getting a sip of his Sprite or making sure all the production's working right. But again, that's always part of his flow in the game, and I got to keep things going. But we're going to do 10 picks. 10 picks, and then kind of discuss the picks as we go. We won't be too thorough, but giving our reasoning behind them as we dig into rivalry week, literally dig in, as I said. So, but before we actually get to the rivalry week, I do want to ask Chance. I know you're getting really big into basketball.
Oh,
Auburn
this season, yeah.
No, you've been getting into basketball lately, especially since Auburn's Final Four run. Bama makes the Final Four run last year. I couldn't get you out of this without talking. Auburn's in the final in Maui. Unbelievable games these past couple days.
Both games unbelievable. We had the comeback of a century the game before.
Yep.
This game, I think we got up by like 16 or 18 early.
Yep.
So, our team is just proving that they need to be a top 5 competitor the entire season.
Yes, they play very hard. Pearl's a great coach. I've always liked Bruce Pearl, but they play hard. And then on the Bama side, they beat Houston yesterday in a heavyweight Rock'em Royal Rumble game. So many fouls, so many free throws. Bama advances. So a lot of good basketball. Chance, I don't know if you know this. There are 7 teams, not including Bama and Arkansas, that are undefeated in the SEC. South Carolina is the only team in the SEC.
A&M, yeah.
Yeah, A&M, but no, South Carolina is the only team in the SEC that's lost at home. Every other team has won every game at home.
Crazy.
There's 9 teams in the top 25. That's almost half the top 25. So this is a loaded year with Bama and Auburn leading the way. I'm very excited about basketball and March Madness. I know we're kind of getting towards the end of football, but I think there's a lot more to come with Tide and Tigers with the basketball front coming soon. So I wanted to definitely discuss that. So we'll start with our 10 picks.
Which games did you want to do?
I got a whole list of games. I'm going to be plugging you off the head and kind of we're going to make our picks. We'll throw them up there. We'll start with the first game. This game used to be the number 1 rivalry in all of college football. It has lost a lot of lackluster. Brett Powell and his Noles are 2-9. The Gators are finally coming on, but still not the Gators we're used to seeing growing up.
It's toilet bowl this year.
Yes,
it is.
Gators are favored by 14.5. I want to know who's your pick. Florida. You would think it's in Tallahassee. Florida State did finally win last week and beat Charleston Southern. Are you taking the Gators like I hopefully think you are, or are you going to go with the
At
Noles?
14.5,
Yes.
I'll probably tease it down to 12.5, and I'll take it.
Okay. I'm going to take Florida to win this game. I do think they cover the spread as well, too. So, to me, that game, Norvell's going to get one more year next year. If he has another 2-9 type year. But the big thing with FSU, if you're not watching at home, is the recruiting. They've lost 4 recruits, 3 of them to Florida this week.
Yeah.
They've gone from 19th to 50th, where Florida's gone from 50th to 17th. That's really another dynamic in this game that you're seeing a lot of people saying, hey, Florida's trending up, FSU's trending down. I talked about that in my segment of the show. This time of year is where you kind of can sway a lot of recruits with the way you're trending in the end of the year play. So
Florida State did get those 2 brothers yesterday.
yes, I did see that. So both like the Gators. All right, pick number 2. Another game, Michigan, Ohio State. This has been the game of the year. This has been the game of the year 2 years in a row, Chance, with Michigan State running it down Ohio State's throat to advance to the playoffs to eventually win a national championship last year. They're 21-point underdogs this year at Ohio State. Harbaugh leaves. It's just a different team. No McCarthy. They're losing both the running backs. Actually, one of the running backs. The other one's still back.
And Connor Stallions.
Yes. But, this game has gone from the best game to a 21-point. Are you still liking Ohio State in this game to win by 21 points?
I am. I think they will cover. I actually think it's going to be 24 points.
24 points. Okay. I actually like Ohio State as well. I was very disappointed. I liked Indiana last week, not to win the game, but at least to keep it close, and they didn't. And Ohio State proved to me they're a big-time team. At home, 3-touchdown favorite. Even though it's a rivalry, I think Ohio State's got some pent-up aggression to take out on Michigan this game. So I like the Buckeyes as well. So 2 for 2. I'm not liking this trend. I like to be something different, Third game, Texas versus Texas A&M. A&M coming off the heartbreaker in Jordan Hare. Texas losing Quinn Ewers for the season maybe. I know he went under MRI for the knee.
Doesn't matter. They've got the best backup they could hope.
Yeah, but Brett Powell's over here. Well, he's losing a quarterback. They shouldn't be playoffs. They still got a good quarterback, one that actually can complete a forward pass, unlike the Noles last year. Texas, 5.5-point favorite. Not that much. That's begging me to take Texas and one in at 5.5. Are you thinking A&M bounces back after the loss in Auburn, or?
What's the line again?
5.5. Texas wins by a touchdown. They got to win by a touchdown, right?
Granted, I've seen how they can give up a lot of points in games. Like when I got to go to Vanderbilt and watch that game, they can just allow other teams to come back and make it a close game. So you never know with how this is a rivalry game, but I do think Texas wins by the spread. And
Texas A&M can still win this game and go to the big SEC championship game. Georgia's the only lock right now. So this could be a huge thing for Texas A&M to win this game and beat Texas. So still a lot on the line in that game. Next game. This is my biggest trap game of the week. I think this line just screams to me Miami at Syracuse. Miami is the favorite. They still haven't locked a spot up in the ACC championship game. Cam Warren had an unbelievable year. Syracuse is 8-3.
Until that last game.
Yes. They play great in the Carrier Dome.
Yeah.
Miami, Cam, this whole season, it's like they're coming from behind. They're barely winning. They blew Wake Forest out last week. Mm-hmm. It's plus 11 for Syracuse. I think Syracuse covers that 11, but I like Miami to win.
Okay, well,
closer than the experts think.
I will say Miami covers the 11.
Wow. Okay, so he likes Miami.
I think they recover from the mishaps
in the
week.
Dome.
Yes.
No, not mishaps last week. Remember, they beat Wake Forest last week.
Yeah, but
it was the week before that.
The week before that, when Cam was getting.
Yes,
that's it. The week before that. But I think they recovered from that. I think they'll be just fine. 11 points.
Okay, all right. Next game, you talked about Vandy. You were at Vandy. Bama's lost at Vandy.
Yep.
Texas struggled at Vandy.
Yep.
Vandy plays very well. They had an unbelievable season. Tennessee goes to Vanderbilt. With the playoffs on the line, everything is opened up like the parting of the Red Sea or the parting of the Orange Sea for the Vols. 10.5 Vanderbilt, 10.5 dogs. That team plays well. That's just
10.5. I think it will be a 10-point game, if not less. I think Vanderbilt stays in that 10.5.
So you're taking Vanderbilt. I'm taking the Vols. The Vols are hot. They shut out I think it was UT Chattanooga last week. I think Tennessee has a big game and realizes, hey, we got a chance to go to the playoffs, make Tennessee football relevant since 1998. I think the Vols cover the spread, so and win the game. All right, the biggest game I think of the weekend, or the best game of the weekend, playoff implications on the line. South Carolina, who has just stormed out of the gates at the end of the year. I guess not storming out of the gates, but
Yeah.
coming on strong at the end.
Finally showing they have some athletes.
Yes,
on their team.
and then Clemson, who has quietly just made their way into the playoffs when everybody really, at the beginning of the season, counted them out after losing to Georgia.
They've been quiet all year.
But they got thumped by Georgia to start the year, and everybody's kind of forgot about them. They're only favored by 2.5 points. This is a pick'em game. At home, Clemson at 2.5. I'm taking the Tigers in Dabo to go to the playoffs, to beat Carolina. I know Carolina's come on strong, but I like Clemson.
I think South Carolina's got it in them. What's the spread again?
2.5.
2.5. I think South Carolina wins.
Wow. So that's our first mix-up of games. He's taking the Gamecocks. I'm taking the Clemson. Like I said, I think it's the best game of the weekend, or at least the closest in the experts' minds. 2 top 15 teams. So
Minus the Iron Bowl, of course. That you never know what'll happen.
yeah, exactly. Yes. All right. Georgia Tech versus Georgia.
Georgia.
Georgia Tech has played very well in some big games. They beat
Early on, they did.
Miami. That's who beat Miami, correct?
Yes.
They beat Notre Dame.
But that was the Notre Dame was the first game of the season.
In Ireland.
Ireland, yeah.
So they've won some big games. Brent Key, former Hewitt Trustful alumni, coaching them up over there.
Yep.
Do you like Georgia? I mean,
What's the line?
19.5.
Oh, geez.
Georgia hadn't beat anybody big, really.
Yeah.
I mean, they were struggling against Chattanooga last week. It was the Charleston Southern.
It's going to come down to Georgia Tech's defensive rush. If they can get pressure on that quarterback, Beck,
Yes.
they'll be able to stay within that line.
Okay.
If their defensive front has no pressure at all, then they're going to get blown out by 30. So I do think Georgia Tech can handle it, but we'll see how that defense handles.
All right, so before we get to the Big Iron Bowl matchup, we're going to pick 2 more between these teams. But I wanted to get your quick thoughts on how college football with the NIL is so much is changing. We'll start first with LSU versus Oklahoma. Both these teams aren't ranked. Oklahoma's coming off the big win against Alabama. Is Brian Kelly possibly on the hot seat if they lose this game? I mean, that means LSU's 7-5.
Give me a year LSU's coach isn't on the hot seat.
Yeah, very true. But did you see this LSU team with a great quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier? Like, did you see this team ending this season not even being ranked and possibly going 7-5? That's got to be such a a bad sign for LSU to come.
Yeah.
They just lost their quarterback to Michigan. Portnoy and the billionaire got involved, so they don't even have their number 1 quarterback coming in for next year, assuming that Garrett goes pro.
Didn't Brady have something to do with that a little bit too?
Brady probably has some stuff to do with that too. But who do you like LSU and Oklahoma?
What's the line?
I think it's I want to say it's 3.5. Double check on that. I may be wrong. I don't even know the line. I think it would be at 3.5.
It is
3.5's the guess from Bergen. Let's see if he's got Vegas on the ropes.
you got it at 6.
6. So
LSU -6.
Oh, and, okay. The game's at home. So I thought it was.
Death Valley.
I thought it was in Oklahoma. So that changes things up. All right. So I'm going with LSU, and that's just so crazy to me. Bama's going to lose to Oklahoma, and LSU is going to beat Oklahoma in Death Valley. And that game, see how Bama loses that game. I'm sorry to reflect back on that. But I like LSU at home at 6 for sure.
At 6, yeah, I like LSU too. Oklahoma's gotten a rude awakening a lot this season from a few SEC teams, and I think LSU's going to end their season on a high note with the same thing.
All right, so we're not going to go with this next one. Egg Bowl. It's been since 2014 since both these teams are ranked. Ole Miss obviously losing to Florida, they're still ranked. Is that game ever going to be relevant again? I mean, can Mississippi State?
No, Ole Miss will be relevant for a while again, but Mississippi State just doesn't have.
Had a little thing going with Mullen. Had a little thing. I mean, do you go get Dan Mullen to be the coach again? I mean,
I just don't see Mississippi State being relevant enough for the next few years because even some of the best players that end up there are going to hit the transfer portal after a year.
So do you think NIL and transfer portal hurts Mississippi State? Because if they're good for 1 year, they're going to leave.
Yes.
So we both like Ole Miss in that game. Notre Dame USC. I think at the beginning of this year, with the way USC ended the bowl game last year, you thought this was going to be a playoff implication matchup. It's not. Notre Dame is in the hunt for the playoffs. Do you see USC possibly sneaking in and maybe winning this game, or you think Notre Dame's going to propel themselves to go to the playoff?
I don't see Notre Dame making it to the playoffs.
Okay.
For some reason, they're in that chart and the rankings.
They are, but
I see them losing this week.
So you like USC?
Yes.
I actually like USC too, Chance. I think that USC is going to have their best game of the year and beat Notre Dame. I may be wrong, and you may be wrong, but that's what I like. All right.
I mean, Notre Dame keeps getting their Peacock games and all, but they're just not nationally liked teams like they used to be.
Yeah.
So I just see USC coming out and handling it.
All right, last two games, just quick thoughts on Washington versus Oregon. This was the game of the year last
Oregon.
year.
What's the line?
No, they're not in the line. Is it crazy to see how quick a team can fall off like Florida State and Washington? Washington and Florida State were both undefeated last year and both, irrelevant this year.
Well, Washington loses their coach.
And their quarterback.
Their quarterback, who Penix is an unbelievable quarterback.
Yeah.
He showed that with his pro day, everything else. He's at Atlanta, isn't he?
Yes.
On the bench, backing up Cousins.
Yes.
Yeah. So he was a huge asset to Washington, but Coach DeBoer also had that team built up for what he needed it to.
Yeah.
And handled their conference just fine. Them dropping off like this is relevant to their coach and their quarterback, the two most important positions.
But do you see more of that? Because Penix was a transfer from Indiana. You see Travis was a transfer from Louisville for Florida State. Those teams I kind of look together like you're pulling from everybody else, but there's no longevity. Like Florida's going to have Lagway for 3 years. You recruit a guy in, you get him for the long haul, you go pick somebody, it may be 1 year. I don't see how teams can survive going 10-0, 2-9, 8-5. It's just that to me like. That may be the NIL area all circled together,
So that is going to be interesting because with that, you've got teams that used to keep going like Alabama and Florida State and Clemson, all them would have winning seasons back to back to back.
Yeah.
Now you've got teams that they know they've got athletes that can win, but those athletes want to play immediately. So they're going to go to teams that just lost their seniors, and they're going to help them become relevant that next year. Same with how Dart did with Ole Miss, with Vanderbilt right now. Like, you can gain a player, and it'll change your whole season.
Cam Ward at Miami. They had a good team, just no quarterback. So you go get a guy from Washington State, he put him in, changes. I mean, there's been a lot of teams that have done that. So that's a great point, Chance. All right, last game. This is, I know, a subject of yours that you've always kind of really gravitated to these last 2 years, and it's Colorado. Obviously, they lose last week against Kansas and completely blow any chance of the playoffs. They say there's an outside chance now. Two things I wanted to ask you about. They're playing Oklahoma State. Do you realize Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State are like 3-8? This is the first losing season for Mike Gundy since, guess when?
Is his son still his quarterback?
I don't know. They're so irrelevant this year. I don't even know who's on the
I
team.
haven't watched the game.
But guess when the last time they had a losing season was?
I want to say like 2012.
2005,
Oh,
our
wow.
senior year of high school.
Wow.
Our senior year of high school was the last year Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State had a losing season. They end the year at Colorado. I have to ask you, because it's been a controversy this week with Colorado, Travis Hunter doesn't become a finalist for the Thorpe Award. There's two guys in there that don't even have an interception that are I think it's Caleb Downs, the kid from Georgia, and the kid from Texas. How is Travis Hunter not a finalist for the Thorpe Award? Like, he's a finalist for every other award. Is it?
I don't know. I mean, he deserves to be for sure, especially with him having a consistency of, 3 interceptions each season.
And they're not even throwing the ball his way.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he never gets off the field. So I think he deserves that, but what was the question?
the question was, can you believe that he got left off the list? I mean,
I guess maybe they're feeling like he's on every list, he's going to win something, so let's give another player an opportunity. But again, he deserves it.
I mean, we haven't heard from Caleb Downs all year until he makes the play last week. Finally, like it just that to me is that's not good judgment. Dion was like, I'm going to give him my Thorpe Award, which I thought was funny too. So
Dion gives him everything.
yeah, LeBron shoes,
whatever.
So yeah, a lot of other crazy notable games that just to me have become irrelevant, but still a lot on the line in rivalry week. Nothing more on the line than what's going on in Tuscaloosa, and that's all Alabama Auburn. The line is Alabama is favored by, do you know how much?
What is it?
I think it's 11.5, is it not?
I Let's see.
I don't see how we did
It is 11.5.
Oh my God, I knew it.
Auburn, easy.
Auburn,
Auburn, easy.
So you should go with Auburn. I'm going with Alabama at 11.5. Alabama obviously is Auburn going to win the game? Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, Auburn's staying inside 11.5.
Okay.
I think Milroe can at least hold on to the ball long enough and run the ball against us that we aren't going to be able to control them from scoring at least 60% of their drives. But our offense is either going to be hit or miss. If it's hit,
So even what you saw last week in Norman, Oklahoma, you think it's going to be a different team at home and Alabama's going to win the game?
I don't think Alabama makes those same mistakes to be down and only score 3 points an entire game against us. Auburn gives up way too many things throughout the season anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But what keeps us in our games is our defense.
Yeah.
So I still think we'll stay in 11.5, but I think Alabama wins it, unfortunately.
I'm just telling you this right now. I've loved the banter this week. That's the right. I mean, when Florida State used to fight midfield,
I think they're just trying to make it relevant.
But
now.
again, it's like Ryan Williams isn't a playmaker. You know, the freshman, I think it's DeMario Davis. I think his name is. We can look it up later. But yeah. Saying Ryan Williams isn't that big of a playmaker.
And then Milroe saying, I don't even know who he
is.
Yeah.
And then you see other Auburn players putting up Peyton Thorne stats next to Milroe, and you see Thorne's had a better year. So it's like, everybody's you don't want to ruffle the feathers. It's a rivalry week. If your feathers
Has Thorne had a better year? His stats say so, but he's been pulled from like 3 games.
And again, like I said, but Jalen's had some of those games that Peyton has had too. I think Jalen's had the better year for sure.
Yeah.
Jalen was on the roads of having a good game last week and maybe being a Heisman finalist, and now there's such a love-hate with Jalen, but for Alabama fans. But again, I think, like I said, Auburn, they're making this rivalry relevant when it's really an irrelevant type year. But I don't want to ruffle their feathers. It's a rivalry game. Feathers are already ruffled. If you can't get jacked up to play this game, you're in the wrong place anyway. So, like, I like the talking. I like the, throwing things back and forth. Like, this is what it's about.
That's kind of the point.
Exactly.
Rivalries, Tide and Tigers here. That's the whole point. We want to go back and forth.
Yes, and it's okay to go back and forth. It's okay to say your team stinks. They're not good, and you not get your feelings hurt because you know what? That's your opinion, and you're allowed to have your opinion. And I think that's what we're pushing for on this show is saying we want to encourage all that. We like to see the crap talking. We like to see people throwing shade at other people because you know what? It's just like a boxing match. There's a reason why Jake Paul made $100 million. Even again, he may be a con artist, but he gets it to where it becomes relevant, and we love that. And that's what I think we're pushing on this show, on this website that we have.
Oh yeah, we want you to talk the smack. We want you to go at each other and just bring up all the history back in '94, who won, everything. The Iron Bowls that you were there to witness. Just let everyone know whose side you're on and who you're cheering for on this website.
Well, I think it was a good point you made earlier in the week was saying that, like, Bama's the only team that can't seem to figure out Auburn. There's a lot of other people in the SEC that have beat Auburn multiple times and multiple years in a row. Bama, this rivalry game is different. Now, it is a lot different when they play in the Plains, but Auburn has Bama's number a lot of times, even with Coach Saban. I mean, the Bo Nix game, in 2000, I think it was 19, they had no business being in that game, and they beat them. Obviously, the kick six was the greatest game maybe of all time, but there's just times where Auburn maybe even shouldn't be in the game, and they end up going to win the game. That's not to mention the Nick Marshall year or the Cam Newton where they were the better team.
The Prayer and Jordan Hare and all that. Yeah.
Yes, so it's one of those things where it's like the Prayer and Jordan Hare.
That was Georgia. Yeah.
But same year, that was a comeback. Was that year? So or no, that was the Nick Marshall year. But yeah, so many times where Auburn's had their number, and Bama even with Saban still lost many games and made Gus Malzahn and made some of these guys a lot of money because of losing to Nick Saban or beating Nick Saban. So. But yeah, we're excited about this show. We're excited about the future and everything we discuss Tide and Tigers. And again, just like in this segment, we'll discuss other games and other things going around in the college football, college basketball world. But our focus will be on these two teams, not the turquoise Alabama team.
Tulane, Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, I'll be sure. I wanted to kind of keep it neutral. I didn't know you were going to come in guns blazing hot, but I guess it is Iron Bowl week, so I'm the one that made the mistake. But
home field advantage, I guess. Studio.
Yeah, home field advantage. So if you're here from Studio G, we're kicking off the season and we're excited. I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving and enjoy the game. Roll Tide.
War Eagle.